At Sterling Enterprises' exclusive annual executive gala, the champagne flowed freely, while I sipped on sparkling water from the corner of the grand ballroom. My $50 phone, with its worn-out case, sat beside me, a sharp contrast to the glittering chandeliers and high-end attire surrounding me. "Is that really a Technophone?" Madison Williams, the regional manager's wife, remarked with thinly veiled judgment, eyeing my device. "I didn't even know they were still making those." She held up her pristine iPhone, probably encased in a designer shell worth more than my entire phone. I offered a polite smile, accustomed to these reactions. "It makes calls and texts. That's all I need." "Darling," Madison's voice was thick with mock sympathy, pitched just loud enough for others to overhear. "How do you even take decent photos? The camera must be dreadful." Before I could respond, James Sterling Jr., the CEO's son and heir apparent, swaggered over, his usual smirk in place. "Mother was right," he commented. "Letting the staff mingle with us has really brought down the tone." He gingerly picked up my phone, turning it in his hands as though it might contaminate him. "Which department are you with again?" "Mailroom, actually," I replied calmly, reclaiming my phone. "I just started this week." While Madison cut in, clearly relishing the attention from the growing crowd. "Maybe after a few paychecks, you can upgrade to something more fitting for our company image." Though with entry-level salaries nowadays, she trailed off with a dramatic sigh. "Speaking of image," James added, adjusting his designer suit, "tomorrow's board meeting is going to set the company's new course. Big changes are on the horizon." He winked at Madison. "Some people might want to update their resumes and their phones." I glanced at my cheap phone's screen. 9:58 p.m. perfect timing. "Actually, the board meeting's been postponed until next week," I said casually, taking a sip of water. James let out a loud laugh, drawing even more attention. "Sweetheart, I think I'd know if anything changed about the meeting. I'm the CEO's son." "Oh yes, James Sterling Jr." I smiled, standing as I heard familiar footsteps approaching. "Which makes me Sarah Sterling." A stunned silence filled the room as my father, James Sterling Sr., CEO of Sterling Enterprises, walked in, commanding attention with his presence. "I see you've all met my daughter," he said. Madison's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. James Jr., my half-brother, turned an alarming shade of pale. "Now that we're all gathered," Dad continued, his voice echoing through the ballroom, "I have an announcement. I'll make it official at next week's board meeting. After 30 years as CEO, I'm stepping down." James Jr.'s smirk began to return, but Dad wasn't done. "And I'm pleased to announce that after completing her MBA at Harvard and turning around our international operations under a different name for the past 5 years, my daughter Sarah will be taking over as CEO, effective immediately." The room went dead silent. I could almost hear Madison's jaw hit the floor. "But," James stammered. "I'm your son, the heir. I've been working here for 3 years. Dad smoothly interjected. "During which time you've spent more on designer suits than you've brought in through deals. Meanwhile, Sarah has increased our international profits by 300% while living on an entry-level salary and using a basic phone to truly understand every level of our business." I brought up the company performance stats on my $50 phone and projected them onto the ballroom screen. "Actually, it's a 324% increase. Would anyone like to see the quarterly breakdowns?" The next hour was a blur of executives who had ignored me all evening suddenly eager to discuss international market strategies. Madison's desperate attempts to apologize were nearly as entertaining as James Jr. explaining to his friends why he had never mentioned having a sister. But the real work had only just begun. I'd spent 5 years immersing myself in every facet of the company from the mailroom up. I'd seen how middle management, like Madison's husband, treated staff when they thought no one important was watching. I'd witnessed firsthand the toxic environment my half-brother and his friends had cultivated in upper management. Now, as CEO, I had the power to change it all. My $50 phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Ready for phase 2. I smiled, thinking of the restructuring plans on my laptop. James Jr. had been right about one thing. Big changes were coming to Sterling Enterprises, just not the ones he had in mind. The party started winding down around midnight, but I stayed behind, sitting in what would soon be my office, gazing out over the city lights. The same view James Jr. had probably thought would be his. My inexpensive phone sat on the polished desk, a deliberate reminder of where I had started and why. The door opened quietly. "Your mother would be proud," Dad said, sitting across from me. She always said success wasn't about the most expensive things, but about understanding the true value of everything. I thought of my late mother, who had taught me that worth wasn't found in brand names or the latest gadgets. "The board meeting next week will be interesting," Dad added, smiling. "Especially when they see the evidence you've gathered about some executives' creative accounting practices." My phone buzzed again, an email from HR confirming receipt of my restructuring plans. Phase 2 would begin tomorrow, bright and early. Madison's husband had been skimming from employee pension funds. James Jr. had been inflating his expenses and taking kickbacks from suppliers. And I had documented every bit of it, carefully gathered over 5 years while they were too busy judging my phone to notice what I was really doing with it. "Get some rest," Dad advised, standing to leave. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." I grabbed my $50 phone, opening the secure folder filled with 5 years of proof. Tomorrow, for some of Sterling Enterprises executives, would be their longest and most unexpected day, and I would be documenting it all on my budget phone. At exactly 7 a.m. the next day, I arrived at Sterling Enterprises with my $50 phone and 5 years of carefully collected evidence in tow. The security guard did a double take as I used the executive elevator. James Jr. had sent an email at 3:00 a.m. accusing me of being an imposter. "Miss Sterling," greeted Thomas, my new executive assistant, a 20-year veteran at the company who'd seen it all. "Mr. James Jr. is waiting for you in your office, along with his lawyer." "Perfect," I replied with a smile, pulling up a specific file on my phone. "Please call security and make sure they're ready." Inside my office, James Jr. lounged in my chair with his feet on my desk, the lawyer standing awkwardly beside him. "Listen, sis," he sneered at the word. "Let's make this simple. You take whatever Dad promised you and walk away, and we'll forget about your stunt last night." I placed my phone on the desk, camera facing him. "You mean like how you forgot about the Miller contract?" James Jr. abruptly dropped his feet to the floor. "What are you talking about? 3 months ago, you took a $500,000 kickback to give the Miller contract to your friend's company instead of the qualified bidder." I played a recording from my phone, his own voice discussing the deal in what he'd assumed was a private conversation. "You can't," his lawyer started. "Oh, but I can," I interrupted. While everyone was busy mocking my cheap phone, no one noticed it was recording their conversations. "It's legal in this state with one-party consent, by the way." I turned to the lawyer. "You might want to stay for the next part. It involves your billing practices too." Security arrived just as James Jr. lunged for my phone. "This is all lies. I'll sue," he shouted. "Actually," I pressed play again. "Here's you admitting to embezzling last Christmas. And here's your conversation with Madison's husband about the pension fund scheme. The FBI is very interested in that one." The lawyer silently packed up and left. By 9:00 a.m., Madison's husband had been escorted from the building, his computer seized by corporate security. By 10:00 a.m., 3 more executives had resigned, their faces pale in the wake of audit results. James Jr. was still shouting about lawsuits when security removed him from the premises. "Your brother's friends are all resigning," Thomas reported, entering with more documents. "And Madison is in the lobby, insisting she needs to speak with you." I checked my phone's calendar. The board meeting was in an hour. Let's make her wait. The board meeting unfolded just as I had planned. 5 years of meticulously gathered evidence. Every shady deal, every misused fund, every instance of discrimination or harassment I had witnessed while working at entry-level positions across the company. "Miss Sterling," one board member stammered. "This is unprecedented." "No," I corrected. "What's unprecedented is how long this corruption was allowed to persist. This company was founded on innovation and integrity. Today, we return to those principles." My phone buzzed, a text from Dad. "Your mother would be proud." By the evening, Sterling Enterprises had a completely new organizational structure. Employees who had been passed over due to office politics were being promoted. The pension funds were being audited and restored, and my brother's old office was being repurposed as an employee daycare center. Madison finally caught up to me as I was leaving. Her once perfect designer outfit was wrinkled, and her makeup was smudged. "Sarah, please, you have to understand, we never knew." "That's the problem," I interrupted. "You never bothered to understand people you thought were beneath you. How's that working out?" "My husband, the pension funds. Please, we can work something out." I held up my cheap phone. "Everything's already worked out. It's all documented right here on my little phone. The authorities have copies." I stepped into my car and paused, turning back to Madison. "Oh, and Madison, I'm keeping the phone. It reminds me never to judge anyone by appearances." The next few months transformed Sterling Enterprises. Employee morale soared, productivity shot up, and even a stock price climbed when the market saw how much dead weight we had cut. James Jr. tried to contest Dad's decision, but it's hard to claim inheritance when you're under federal investigation for fraud. Last I heard, he was looking for work, but his reputation had already preceded him. Madison's husband took a plea deal. She sold her designer handbags to cover his legal fees and moved in with her sister in Ohio. 1 year later, I sat at my desk, gazing out the window, reflecting on that night at the party. My $50 phone sat in a frame on my desk, retired but preserved as a reminder. Beside it was a photo of my mother, smiling proudly. A knock on the door broke my reverie. "Miss Sterling, the new employee orientation is starting." I smiled, picked up my new phone, still not the most expensive model, but chosen for its functionality rather than status. "Thank you, Thomas. Let's go welcome them to the new Sterling Enterprises." The orientation room was filled with eager faces. I took my place at the podium, my simple phone recording for training purposes, just like its predecessor had done. "Welcome to Sterling Enterprises," I began. "Let me tell you a story out of $50 phone and what it taught me about true value. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about making sure no one else has to experience what you did. Sometimes it's about changing an entire culture, one recorded conversation at a time. And sometimes it's about keeping your cheap phone as a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and the most powerful weapon isn't the most expensive one. It's the one people underestimate." Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.